Good morning, everyone. My name is Varun Khera, and I will be your host for today. I would like to welcome you all to this webinar about the scope and opportunities in the development sector. I am sure the development sector has always piqued our interest and brought with it a plethora of questions. Is this the right field for me? Will I be able to create an impact while sustaining myself? Will there be enough opportunities for me to grow? All your questions are going to be answered today as we hear from our distinguished guests. Each of them are social entrepreneurs and have made their mark in the development sector. They will be sharing their experiences and guiding all of you. I would also like to take this opportunity to speak about India's first development management institution, the Indian School of Development Management. ISDM aims to create a vibrant and catalytic ecosystem for development management in India. It seeks to develop a cadre of authentic development management professionals for stellar leadership and efficient management in the social sector. Now, let me quickly introduce you to our guests. Our first guest is Manisha Gupta. Manisha is the founder and CEO, an angel investor and consultant to social entrepreneurs. Good to have you with us, Manisha.
Thank
Our
you.
next guest is Abhishek Dubey, who's the founder of Muskan Dreams. He's doing some exceptional work in the field of education. Muskan Dreams is a non-profit organization that is working to bridge the digital divide in government schools in India. Abhishek. Now I'd like to introduce Alakshi Tomar, who's going to be joining us in another 10-15 minutes. Alakshi is the founder of TrueCup. TrueCup is building communities for positive menstruation by educating and empowering women in urban and rural spaces. And our last and final guest is Anshul Tiwari. Anshul is the founder and editor-in-chief for Youth Kiawah, India's largest online platform for young people to express themselves on various important issues. Welcome, Anshul. Today, all our speakers would be sharing their journeys in the social sector and their take on the scope and opportunities in this sector. So, without further ado, let's begin. I'd like to first welcome Manisha. Manisha has ventured into the social sector. Today, she'll be sharing her experiences and learnings for all of you. Over to you, Manisha.
Thanks, Varun, and thank you to Jewish Talk and ISDM for giving me this opportunity. I'm just going to actually start with that one sentence that you shared. Will I be able to make an impact? And that's really the big question that I had when very many decades back when I was a young person and sort of was really at the threshold of my career. I'm just going to kind of share my little story of how I made my way into the development sector, and sort of from there on, then take on your questions. So before I start, I just want to share that I went to college before internet came to the world, right? So it just gives you a sense of, how many decades back, I was in college, and it also gives you a sense of, my age, though a sort of, being in the development sector sort of never keeps you, feeling old or jaded for a single minute. But at that point of time, I think even though we didn't have internet, as young people, we were all as spirited and as sort of sure about our capacities to sort of really bring about change. And those were the conversations we used to have at that time. What is really going to be the purpose of our careers? What is it that we are going to do, and why is it that we are going to do? So we used to have a lot of those conversations. And at that point of time, sort of I was growing up in a family which was fairly rigid and conservative about its ideas on what women in the family should sort of step out, and what their lives should be like. So our lives were pretty much, sort of had been ascribed and transcribed and written up for us. And as a college goer, as someone sort of, who was on the verge of her career, I think the one thing that was very clear of at that point in time was um, that the only way I could create impact in any other profession or field was if I could create an impact in my life, and if I could find a sector which would give me the opportunity to shape my voice and my choice. And way back then, journalism was really the space, that I identified. Though, of course, with So journalism and mainstream journalism looks extremely different now. 2 decades ago, it was the space where where questions were being asked, where there was a lot of sort of writing on issues that mattered, on issues that were invisible. And I was sort of really in a big rush to kind of start working. So straight out of school and before college, I took a gap year, and sort of people at that time, my friends and my family, sort of really sort of I could see their eyeballs, going round and round in their head, because a gap year was too much of a stretch. But I took a gap year, and I sort of went and worked as a intern in a very reputed media house of Kolkata, with a very reputed editor who is sort of in the limelight now. And in less than 3 months, I realized that that was a space which did great journalism and asked lots of important questions to the country, to the state, to the government of the time. But the internal dynamics was nothing short of toxic. At that time, we didn't have words like toxicity, XYZ. But as a young person in journalism, I saw how there was rampant corridor chatter on sexual harassment. I saw how these behaviors were normalized. I witnessed as a 17-year-old, the games that you had to really sort of play to get your bylines out. And most importantly, I saw a fair degree of disrespect with which editors treated their staff. Now, I do not at all want to sort of say that this is what is the main story of mainstream journalism, but it was my experience. And sort of experiences vary as you move from sector to sector. But I was very sure at that point in time that I was not going to move from one oppressive track to another, and this was not going to be a space for me. And it was my personal decision to kind of really find my voice and choice. And of course, we didn't have youth Kiawahs at that time. Otherwise, I would have knocked on Anshul's door and asked for a job, and hopefully he would have given me one. But I sort of then set out on a path to sort of really look for for a space for me. At that point of time, ISDM wasn't around. We didn't have terms like social entrepreneurship. We didn't have the concept of development management. But I did come across an organization called Ashoka Innovators for the Public that was talking about social entrepreneurship. And, in the 1990s, entrepreneurship as a concept hadn't hit India, so leave alone social entrepreneurship. And when I went and met the people in that organization, I was completely blown. I didn't understand a word of social entrepreneurship, but I had a sense of destiny. I had a sense that I could be part of shaping this space because it was new, it was emerging. And I kind of sort of said, yeah, and this was going to be a place where more than journalism, I would get the opportunity to be part of in journalism, I knew I could write about solutions. I could raise questions. But in social entrepreneurship and more largely in the development sector, I thought the opportunity to be part of solutioning, to be part of innovation would be something that would be very cool, right? So I joined the sector. I joined Ashoka Innovators for the Public, and from there, my whole journey into the development sector has been about learning from the gurus on the ground. From learning from social innovators who teach you how to ask questions rather than always be ready with the right answers. My work in the development sector has really taught me to leave aside degrees. Of course, degrees are important. They build academic rigor and all of that. But to sort of really look at what is it that one can do to to be interested in the person in front of me. And I think much more importantly, sort of over a period of time, by working with social entrepreneurs for 10 years, which I did in Ashoka Innovators for the Public, I also learned how to be entrepreneurial. I also learned how to be a social entrepreneur. So that really is my journey. And in many ways, my invitation to each one of you, and I'm going to stop here, is to say that, before you step into the development sector, if you ask yourself, who do you want to be, right? And why do you want to do what you want to do? And just keep the, sort of the whole chatter and the loud stories from outside aside for a little bit, and just sort of focus on those questions in an authentic way. So if you want to sort of really be in a sector where you can be a lifelong learner, where you can be an innovator, where you can work, where you can sort of work with systems across board, from complex government systems to equally deep and wise community systems of the country. I think our invitation would really be for you to kind of really think about it, because that's really been my journey in the development sector. And I wish I could enroll into ISDM at that point in time, but I learned a lot about creative development management on the ground. And I think I've had just a really fulfilling career and a very fulfilling life of lifelong learnability just by being here in this space. Yeah, Varun, so that's sort of really my story.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Manisha. Um, so it was great to have you share your experience and give an optimistic view to the young people that want to be a part of this sector. It's really important for them to get first-hand experience or the first-hand knowledge from an insider of the sector. So I think thank you for that. So moving forward, I would like to call Anshul, who will share his take on the opportunities in the social sector. Over to you, Anshul.
Thanks so much, Varun. First of all, I'm delighted to be here, and thank you. It's a Saturday morning. All of you have joined. I see the numbers, just hundreds of people listening in right now, trying to figure out how we can do good in the world. And that's definitely a positive sign. I think that's a great point to start off with. For those of you who already know, I run Youth Kiawahs, and for those of you who don't know, it's pretty much South Asia's largest completely crowdsourced platform for young people to speak up on issues that they care about. I started this when I was 17, about 13 years ago. And the real motivation for me to actually begin this, and I was in school at that time, I was still struggling to get through, get past my 12th board exams. And I had started blogging at a fairly young age. I think my brother got into computer sciences when I was 14. That's when we got a computer. That's when we got introduced to the internet. And that's when he told me that, you know what, there's this thing called blogging. And if you write something on the internet, anybody can read it. And I was so fascinated by that idea that I started a whole range of really, embarrassing blogs about my personal life and diary and this and that at the age of 14. But I think when I started Youth Kiawahs at 17, the response was a very natural response to the fact that I felt that, especially in the traditional media, but more so in general life as well, young people's voices are not taken seriously. And even though young people are told that, oh, you're the future, you have to do this, you have to do that, their role in decision making at any level, be it at a family level or a policy level, is actually left to minimal. If you look at most of the the organizations that care about young people and they talk about young people's voices, it kind of is reduced to like a youth advisory board or like a youth group that they create, which is separate from their main work, which I think is very reductive in nature. If you want young people's voices to matter, you have to include them in the main stay of the work that you're doing. So as a response to that kind of a situation, I started Youth Kiawahs, which initially was a personal blog, but very quickly transformed into a platform where anybody could write. And I'll cut the chase and I'll tell you about where we're at right now. As of today, like I said, Youth Kiawah is one of the largest platforms of its kind. It's got more than 3-4 million people reading it every month. A community of more than 100,000 writers talking about socio-political issues from across the world, but of course, more specifically India. That's been our main focus, our focal point over the last many years. And over the last 3 years in particular, what we've also kind of done is that we've realized that the impact of Youth Kiawahs will always be limited if we don't play a key role in enabling more young people to become social entrepreneurs, like I had the opportunity, or like so many others have had the opportunity. So we started a fellowship called the Youth Kiawahs Action Network Fellowship, where we fund social entrepreneurs who are young, who are under 25, and they're just starting out. They're probably at an idea to execution stage. And they really want to bring systemic change. So it's not about a one-off initiative that they're running, but they want to change the policy framework around the issue that they're working on. And that really kind of started, building a lot of opportunities for us, as well as we get to work with a lot of young people, and for the people that we are working with also. And we've had the opportunity of working with a whole host of development sector organizations, from the UNs to the ILOs and so on and so forth. But I think one critical learning that I've had from my journey, which I think everybody who's thinking of the development sector should know of, is that the very traditional thinking around entrepreneurship is that if you're an entrepreneur, you're either into tech or you're into the newer types of tech, health tech, fintech, ed tech, etc., etc., etc. But when you think of the development sector, you mostly think of getting a job. Or you mostly think of working with an organization that's doing some phenomenal work. But what I want to really kind of highlight is that today, more than ever, the opportunity to become an entrepreneur in the development sector that works on solutions at scale is actually very, very big. Also because there aren't enough people who are trying to figure it out at a young age. And I feel that's really the opportunity for young people who want to, create an impact. The second very important thing that I feel about the development sector is that it really helps you build solid connections that are based on passion and your ability and your intent to solve an issue. It's more than just money. Of course, there is a monetary opportunity as well, but it's more than just making money. It's definitely got a much wider, much larger purpose to it, which helps you align with so many more people, so many more organizations. It enables you to be a part of so many networks and so on. And I think the real thinking that we kind of at Youth Kiawahs, and I personally also try and propagate when it comes to the development sector, any kind of impact work is fairly simple. Imagine a pyramid. And imagine the people who are, and the pyramid is basically representative of the power structure of our society. And typically at the top of the pyramid, you'll have governments, bureaucrats, industrialists that influence governments and government policies and so on. In the middle of the pyramid, you'll have people who have access, people like us, people who are able to join a Zoom call, who have access to the internet, who have access to opportunities, education, who are able to go to schools like ISDM and so on. And at the bottom, and multiple tiers, into the bottom of the pyramid, you'll have communities that are marginalized, vulnerable, affected, and then you have intersections within that, right? And I feel the real opportunity for folks like us is that we have the power to understand the access that we have and use it to actually make sure that issues of every single person who's below the pyramid, at the bottom of the pyramid, is amplified to a level that it actually reaches the people who are at the top of the pyramid and is able to influence their decision making. Because I think one of the biggest opportunities that the development sector gives you is the opportunity of creating systemic change. And when I say systemic change, I mean you're able to directly impact the larger policy framework, be it at a national level or a state level, even a municipal level, that can make sure that the impact you're trying to create sustains forever. Because, I think the very critical aspect of looking at your work in the development sector is that you are here today, you may not be here tomorrow. You may move into a different industry, you may move into a different space, you may move to a different organization. But the issue that you're working on needs a resolution at some point. And that is where, a very specific focus on framework change really comes in. And I think the development sector brings that opportunity to you. It gives you the power to bring change in government policies, impact social stigmas, impact stereotypes and taboos around you, and so on. There was a research that was done by an agency that works on building careers in the development sector, and this was towards the end of 2019, and the study basically talked about how 42% of the jobs in the 5 to 10 years of work in the development sector were actually not taken, and in the 10 to 20 year bracket, it was about 15%. So there is definitely scope for you to be able to find organizations to work with, for you to be able to build your own organizations, for you to be able to engage more people and engage different kinds of social entrepreneurs to really kind of build a solid career for yourself in the development sector. I think the other very important aspect of being a young person in the development sector is, and this is something I really talk about quite a lot, is that the one generation that has the most potential of changing the world is actually Gen Z, the new generation that's now coming. Because you have younger people who have a very different version of the world that they are growing up in. When I was growing up, 13 years ago when I started YK, the opportunity landscape was very different. There was no Facebook, Twitter. There was no, nobody talking about a lot of the challenges that we're facing today. There was no misinformation and polarization at the scale that is happening today. It was at a very different scale at that time. And it wasn't rampant to be living in a polarized world where you're kind of, divided just on the basis of ideas that you don't even have full experience of understanding. But the reality is that today there are younger people who are growing up in this day and age. There are younger people who are, for whom disinformation and polarization is the norm. And it's going to be the norm for a while to come. So if you just think of it, if you just think of the landscape from that point of view, it gives you a phenomenal, degree of opportunity to work with young people, to make sure that the impact that you're creating builds a better world for them. And the scope is really, really endless. Today, nobody really needs a social work degree to do social good. You need intent, you need passion, and you need curiosity, because it's extremely important to approach it from the point of view of not being an expert at it, because nobody is an expert at it. And really kind of being curious to learn, to understand, what you're building, and so on. And in a nutshell, that's really been my understanding while I've been building YK, while I've been able to work with so many organizations from across the board, that if you really want to create impact, you have to have courage, you have to have compassion, you have to have candor, you have to have curiosity for sure. And you need to approach it from the point of view of the kind of impact that you want to create, because that's really what defines your career in the development sector. I'll stop at that. And I'm happy to answer questions that people might have.
Great. Thanks, Anshul. Questions we would be taking at the end of the panel discussion will come later. We'll just wrap up with all the talks right now. But Anshul, something that I would like to point out from your talk was the impact of, the impact that you spoke about social entrepreneurship, right? That is, we can take jobs in the development sector, but how we can create and solve problems by taking up social entrepreneurship and rather becoming employers or rather than employees, right? So I think that stood apart from me. So for me, thank you so much for that.
Thanks, Varun.
I think moving forward, we have Abhishek. Abhishek has been working extensively in the field of education, and today he will specifically talk about the opportunities in that section and how Muskan Dreams has done that for so many people across the country. Over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Varun. Thank you so much. So good morning, everyone. And my name is Abhishek Dubey. I'm co-founder at Muskan Dreams. So it's a social impact organization that we work to bridge schools, teachers with technology. So today I'm here to talk to you all, young people, about the scope and opportunities in the development sector. So I know that in one side, actually, or the other, how nonprofits work, how NGOs works. But globally, the development sector third sector along with the other sectors. So we all have seen, organizations from the development sector that have grown from zero to now they are like a sort of top across the globe, and they are solving the real and complex problem in the world. Right. So let me just quickly start with my journey, of what we have done so far and how it's all started. And, I believe that, everything starts with why. Whatever we are doing, why we are doing today. So in my journey, I was born and brought up in a very small village. School. A few years later, my family moved to they shift to city, and because my father got a job, he selected as a government officer, and then I got admission. I was put in a good private school, and I think that's how that's how everything has changed in my life. And then I realized the huge gap between the government school and the good private school. I was literally surprised when I got admitted in the good private schools. And I noticed the inequality, and I wanted to bridge that gap. So when I went to college, I realized I decided to do something for the same community. I realized because this is the right time. During the college life, you're not accounted for any with the idea of Muskan Dreams. The idea was basically, to solve the societal challenges in education. And I realized, if we can, use technology, because I was pursuing computer science engineering, I was software engineer, and I realized, if we can introduce technology, and I think that's how we can actually change, how we can actually improve the learning experience of every child, especially in the rural and remote schools. And that's how everything started. In 2017, we have started with one school, but currently we are working with 100 plus schools directly, and working with state government on the public policies, on the advocacy side, giving them best practices. So these are some of the things we at Muskan Dreams did in the last 5 years. So why we have started. The biggest question here is basically, why do we need more nonprofits in India? Why we need more young people, in the development young people, the organization moving towards the getting right kind of talent, right? And why can't the government tackle all the challenges and solve the problem at scale? Why we need more nonprofits? My voice is breaking. Is it better now? Yeah. So the biggest question is, the biggest question is basically, why we need a more nonprofits in India, why we need more social entrepreneurs in India, and why can't the government, tackle all the challenges, right? Because we have them, they have the kind of capacity to solve the problem at scale. Majority of nonprofits are failing in, scaling their impact, right? So I think to scale the impact, to getting the right kind of talent is very, very important. Otherwise, we problem in the world that the government can't solve, their own it's right. So, and to require a lot of support from the community, to solve that problem and scale. And it required a lot of innovation. It required a lot of, human resource support from the innovators, to tackle those challenges. Now, if we look at the COVID side, COVID catch itself, right? It made all of us rethink how we can make learning is more inclusive and more intuitive. And the future of education go a rapid digital transformation. And that's the kind of lesson we all have learned somewhere from the COVID, right? But the good thing today is that the development sector is growing the young people. And I think that in India, we have biggest problem in the world. And also at the same time, we have a youth, right? And the young people are so passionate that they are, coming with innovative solutions every day, trying ground and, grassroots level organizations, helping them in building their capacity, helping them in improve their, talent scale, fundraising skills, different kind of roles that, the young people are playing today. And I think the nonprofits play a key role these days because of, non-delivery by the government and the rapid disintegration of this social support system, right? So I think that's why we need more young, people to come and join the development sector, to come and join the, movement towards solving and building, new India, right? And I think that since, the scope of this role is constantly broadening, there is an increase in the number of organizations every day in the development sector. And with increasing the number of the organization, the demands of getting is increasing by the time, right? So I think because it requires a lot of efforts, it requires a lot of strong leadership team, management team, operations team to build an organization, to create impact and scale. And I think there are different kind of NGOs, and all of them have, sort of different people functions on the ground. In terms of operations, in terms of managing team, in terms of communication, I mean, there are any number of works, which we can, through which you can actually contribute, right? Doesn't matter you have that capability or not, but actually you can learn, but I think the development sector, the biggest thing is basically which the sector gives you, it makes you more empathetic toward the individuals, more empathetic, and make you feel realize that you are human first, not your religion, not your casteism or any other thing, right? I think which is more and in India that are working with so much professionalism, passionate to actually solve the problem, right? And I think today there are n number of organizations are working, and n number of our incubators are running. They are supporting organizations with funds, with right kind of talent, building their capacity. There are and at the same time we have n number of challenges in India, right? And along with these challenges in the world, n number of challenges in this world. And till the time you have challenges, you will have the opportunities. And I think that because of opportunities, when you have a solution, right? And then solution will give you, more sort of opportunity to solve that problem, to talk about that problem, right? And I think today we all have sort of young, inspiring people from different development sector organizations. They are doing wonderful work, right? So let me just tell you, the biggest thing is basically, it's satisfaction and empathy while working with the development sector. And when you work with an organization, that is working towards making an impact, you feel more satisfied because you are doing, something which that you are here with a purpose, you are here with the feelings, you have that kind of empathetic, approach towards everyone, right? And you are at the end, you are here to do something good for the people and society. So that's what is the role of every individual, and that can and have to start your own organization to create impact. It's just basically that you can become a part of any wonderful organization, because somewhere or the other, we all are actually work to create impact. And I think that the only way to achieve impact is work in collaboration, be a part of good organization, whenever you feel that this is the right choice and this is the right sort of organization, through which you can actually create impact. So growth opportunities in the development sector, I think that this sector is multifaceted and is moving towards a more professional, more structured approach, and more scalable approach, just like for profit organizations. And I think this makes a lot of sense for the youth to be a part of this sector, because it is creating a lot of opportunities. And as I mentioned, the growth is very high. And I'm talking about not just in terms of career growth, but also in terms of economic and social growth. Because when you work with a nonprofit, you get a more exposure, you get more sort of solving approach along with young people. And I think it is very different from the corporate sector, right? And I think that there are a lot of opportunities here. You just have to identify the right organization about step is your important, right? And you need to think, why I am doing whatever I am doing today, right? So yeah, I think uh, these are kind of some of the questions which everyone needs to ask from themselves. And with those words, I would like to sum up that uh, so thank you so much for joining us, and it's a wonderful opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. I think you pointing out the need for more nonprofits in India, and especially how challenges and opportunities are correlated in the sector. I think that brings out a fresh perspective for our audience. Thank you so much for that. Moving forward, we have Alakshi Tomar with us. Is available. Over to you, Alakshi.
Hi guys. I'm unable to start my video. Is that okay? Hello?
Yes, please. You can start your video.
I'm unable to start it because the host has stopped it.
Just give me 1 second.
Yeah. Hi. Should I start off, Arun? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Alakshi, loud and clear. All yours.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I can't see anyone, but I'm hoping you can all see me. So my name is Alakshi, as one mentioned. I'm the co-founder of the True Company, which is a positive and green menstruation startup. And we manufacture reusable menstrual products like the True Cup. And we also do awareness and education around menstruation, sexual reproductive health. So I'm very excited to speak to you all and the growth and opportunities in the development sector. And specifically, students from Hansraj, if there are any here, I can't see anyone. So if you can just say hi in the chat window, that'll be interesting. So a shout out to all the students from Hansraj, if there are any, which is where I want to sort of start off my talk or my conversation today. So while I studied in Hansraj, my professional journey started like most of the young freshers' journey does, without much thought, going where life takes you. And after I finished my English literature in Delhi University, I figured that since I don't want to get into media and I like talking to people, so I should apply for an HR role in Accenture. It was literally just that, which is why I went to Accenture, moved to Bangalore for that. So I joined the corporate rat race per se, and I did build a lot of critical skills around people management, communication, but I completely failed to enjoy my work. So I looked for meaning outside of it, and while I started training a group of people with disability, I was reading a lot on feminism, social issues, and I sort of discovered my passion at that time that I wanted to be doing work that taps into the potential of people, specifically who have a lot of disadvantages stacked against them, be it economic, social, cultural. So yeah, hi, Nurul. I'll focus on my talk. So that's what I decided to do. I quit my job at Accenture after 2 years of working there and joined a 2-year residential program called the Gandhi Fellowship. So there I worked with government school teachers, headmasters, slum communities based out of Bombay to improve the learning levels of children. So during the time, during the fellowship in Bombay, as a part of a process of the fellowship, we had to go stay in the community for 1 to 3 months, which is where I discovered a lot of issues that were close to my heart, specifically the marginalization of women. I also realized that when mobility and freedom is taken away from you, achieving any kind of goal is very difficult. So even though we have the passion, we have the skills, but if you're not able to move out of your house or you're not free enough to do that, it becomes almost impossible to do to sort of achieve these goals. And therein I discovered another very, very grave challenge, which was that a lot of menstruating girls were not attending school. So they weren't dropping out, but there was a lot of absenteeism going on. And they were also facing outright discrimination. There were infrastructural challenges. Girls were told not to talk to their elders or take a bath during their periods. So since then, this issue sort of stuck to me. So I wanted to work on menstruation and women's livelihood on a long-term basis. But I decided that after the fellowship that I wanted to understand the inner workings of the social sector from a macro perspective. So while I work at the grassroots, just how does the operational business take place? So the strategy behind it. So I spent some time working there, and each of these experiences then led me to founding my own company, which is the True Company, and launching True Cup. So while I was going into setting up the company, I knew that menstrual cups, which we manufacture, they have the ability to transform the lives of menstruators, going towards equity, going towards freedom and mobility. And we also decided to train women on menstruation, sexual reproductive health, gender politics, and sustainability. So this is what I do right now. But in this entire journey from the corporate sector to the social sector and then becoming an entrepreneur, I did have a lot of help on the way of people advising me. And now that you are on that journey, I have a few insights that to share with you regarding what kind of organizations, how do you identify, and what kind of roles could be right for you. So if you look at the private sector, the career trajectories there are pretty well hashed out. So you know, like this is step one, step two. But in the social sector, while it's still getting organized, looking for opportunities is still pretty fragmented. So in the research that I've done in my experiences, I can broadly bucket it into four things. So firstly, you have in terms of the organizations working in the development sector. So there's firstly the foundations, which are typically associated with the corporate, investing their CSR funds, either associated with the sector or a cause. Some of them work across causes also. For example, so you have the Piramal Foundation where I work. There's the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, Azim Premji Foundation. So that's your first bucket. Second bucket comes down to multilateral organizations, which are international organizations dedicated to solving country-wide issues. They either do it through research or on-ground work. So you have your UN organizations, Oxford Policy Management, there's Clinton Health Access initiatives. So those are a couple of multilateral organizations. Third comes your on-ground organization, which is what typically people refer to as the social sector, which is your NGOs and social enterprises, startups. So now these can be either for-profit or non-profit, but they have a unique solution set. So it's specific to an issue or a region. And while social enterprises are like a hybrid model, so which is what the True Company is, it's a social enterprise because we reinvest our revenues into social impact initiatives. So it's like the best of both worlds, if I can put it like that. But there are examples of NGOs like Gunj, Pratham that are doing, Travel Education Foundation that are doing brilliant work. You have your social enterprises like Grameen Bank, Ashoka. Startups can be either NGOs or social enterprises. So a lot of edtech, technology-based or otherwise startups that have come through in the past 5-6 years. So that's your third bucket. Now your fourth bucket is the consultancies, which are mostly working and partnering with clients like corporations, philanthropists, foundations, and social enterprises, as I mentioned. So these organizations help these other clients to achieve their social impact goals. So that's what a consultancy does. So now that we've sort of bucketed the organizations and there is a way to figure out which one you're more keen towards. But the second step comes in to identify, okay, what is the role I want to play in these organizations? So it's not purely about picking that I want to, say, apply for UN Women and that's what I want to do. You also have to figure out what role will you play within the organization. It can be based on your interest area or the organization, what they have to offer. And a match between that. But at this stage, I would always say that be open to learning and evolving. Reflection-based action is what will help. It did help me, and it can motivate you to sort of support your career trajectory. And for young people joining the social sector workforce, I also believe that on ground, getting first-hand exposure to the problem, that is very, very essential. So only then can we assess that what is it, what solution works, what is the problem, what doesn't work. To give you an example, when we started with menstrual cups in India and low-income communities, we realized it's a beautiful solution. It's cost-effective, it's reusable, but culturally there are a lot of barriers around insertion. So when we used to go to any kind of community, any income community, first conversation would be someone who's either used tampons or is married or is comfortable with insertion, and then move towards the other populations, be it teenagers or just people uncomfortable with insertion. So the thumb rule is that you need to sort of immerse yourself in the community, wherever you're working, and then work with them to understand the issues and then create solutions instead of just going in with your preconceived notions and your own solution. So as you begin your journey here, I would always say that listen first and then suggest or do anything. So you also need to parallelly start piloting solutions, failing, improving, and doing fast MVP, like a minimal viable products. That's also very key, but listening is also very, very important before you go into a community. So yeah, so that's your role split. So now we have the organizations, now we have the role. Now how do we sort of get in touch? How do we get there at the brink of get applying for these roles or identifying these organizations? So for that, I believe online job portals really work well, be it DevNet, Arthan. These are some that are focused around the social sector itself. Employee referrals have worked a lot as opposed to just applying and sending in your CVs blatantly. And that's second. And the third is networking, right? So I'm a strong believer of active networking rather than waiting for people to come and speak to you. I think we should be humble enough to go and see and explore what are the other stories out there. How can we benefit each other? So networking is not only that you want a job out of it. It's a learning journey. It's to identify how you can support that person or that person can support you. So the importance of networking, I cannot stress more on. So yeah, so these are the three pieces. Since I can't see anyone, I'll just continue forward. So if you sort of zoom out a little bit and look at the way the world is and the social sector, how it's evolving, we have seen that the opportunities have grown in terms of good and honest work that you want to do. There are a lot of opportunities to do that, and the typical understanding of the social sector has changed. So I know in a couple of countries like the UK, it is still referred to as the third sector. So now I find that very odd because unconsciously what we're doing is we're creating a hierarchy within the sectors in terms of their economic importance. So I would argue that social impact-based organizations, they do have long-term economic impact. In the same way, even the private sector or for-profits can have huge impact in terms of social impact. By creating jobs, they add to the GDP, they create value. I think what matters is how are these organizations run, what is the mission and vision of these organizations, and what is the intent of the people. I know it's very tough to figure, but I feel like the question is important to keep in the back of your mind. You don't analyze based on, okay, are they earning revenue or not, or what is my monetary and what is my compensation structure, but you analyze by what is the long-term goal of this organization and how does that solve long-term problems. But having said that, if you look at the monetary aspect, definitely, the social sector fares on the lower end. The thought being that individual needs and wants should be limited, and seva or creating value is what should be the primary motivation. And while I do agree with that, but it's still a very nuanced topic. We need another session for that. But I'll try to sort of summarize it, right? So the value of the skills of an individual or what they have to offer, that can also be taken as a factor of consideration. So rather than purely focusing on motivation, I would say that what is the skill set that you bring on the table has to be equally relevant. So now different models are emerging. For example, the way we hire, or through social enterprises, startups, there are conscious corporates that are doing this, which are trying to figure how to measure and associate monetary compensation with motivation as well as skill. So you can sort of create a balance between that. And yeah, so while I'm running TrueCup and the True Company, my next goal and engagement is with an organization which supports and incubates startups to grow. That's my next endeavor along with TrueCup. So these can be, they don't necessarily have to be nonprofits. The objective is that we grow organizations that are focused on positive social impact. So the emphasis is on minimalism, sustainability, wellness, personal development, self-reliance, wealth equity, and communities. So I know I said a lot of words, but if any of these words resonate with you and you have an idea around that, please get in touch with me. Happy to sort of speak through it and see how we can support as an incubator. So I decided to be part of this incubator while running KUKA because I identified that my goal in life and my passion is twofold. There's gender empowerment, and then I want to sort of identify a new idea of growth. So how can you grow consciously and sustainably, be it as individuals or as organizations? So that is my passion. And how did I get there? I think that also I sort of identified a couple of steps around that as to how to get to that passion. It's not a short methodology, but it's something to consider. So the first step that at least I followed was that what does impact mean to me? So what does impact stand for, or what is it when someone experiences change? What does that mean for you? And therefore, what motivates you? It's not an easy answer, and every experience will add to your knowledge. But the thing is that you have to reflect and be conscious of the question at least. So that is step one. Step two would be to then research, or what kind of organizations do you like? What kind of work excites you? Keep reading, and for non-readers, you can always listen. So there are audiobooks and news articles just to understand the world more about you. Step three would be to isolate the people that can help you in this journey. So basically your network. So get a mentor, brainstorm with your peers, attend events and conferences, and just get out there. And the final step is to reach out and experiment. So you will not learn only by reflection. Action is equally important. So through volunteering, internship, or just creating on your own, put that idea out there. Like a quick thing, I'm going to wrap up in the next 1 or 2 minutes, but there's a book by Muhammad Yunus. It's called The World of Three Zeros. So he talks about creating a new economic model. The proposal is that the new economics that we are aiming to create will create a world with zero employment, zero poverty, and in an eco-friendly way, so that we have zero net carbon emissions. So each one of us has the power to launch innovative social businesses which are designed to serve human needs. And that's his hypothesis. And another hypothesis he has is that human beings are born entrepreneurs and not mere job seekers. And while I agree with him, I feel like you decide your own journey, whether you want to experiment and put an idea out there, build it up yourself, or you want to build your skill set and perspective by associating with other ideas that drive your passion. So all I'm trying to say is that you need to sort of create opportunities for yourself. And if it fails, it's completely okay. You always have a next time. Just keep learning from your failures and your successes. Go out there and do some good and honest work and scale your impact. So that's it from my end. Thank you so much. There are a couple of questions. I think we can take it up later.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alakshi. Just something that I would like to highlight from your talk was that you pointed out the different types of organizations and the opportunities that are available with the said organizations in the social sector. I think that was really, really informative, and also the importance of networking. I think personally, I feel that it in a professional's career, it acts as plays a huge role, networking per se. So thank you. It was really, really helpful. With that, we're done with the talks of our distinguished speakers, and we'll now move towards the panel discussions. I hope that all of you from these speakers, their experiences and their learnings in the development sector. Now, moving ahead, it's time for the panel discussion, which will be moderated by Dr. With deep engagement in domains of natural resource governance, institution building, organization studies, and sustainable livelihood. In her 16 years of experiencing and co-creating social changes communities, Dr. Aruna has worked with multiple national and international institutions in the social sector. Her domain of expertise and interests are environmental governance, social sector, education, innovation, and institution building. She has received the Young Analyst Award by EU and DPG, the prestigious MK Tata Prize, and the NTPC Gold Medal from TIS Mumbai, and the Felix Scholarship Trust Award for her PhD at SOAS. Dr. Aruna is a board member of Swecha, V for Change Foundation. Aruna is the director of the Knowledge and Research Center. As faculty for ISDM's postgraduate program, she also co-leads and supports employment and development, systems designed for social intervention, and radical transformation leadership, amongst many others. She has numerous publications in the domain and is also part of the Honeybee Network, a volunteer network spread across 75 countries engaged in the development of a sustainable knowledge ecosystem. I hand it over to you, Dr. Aruna.
Hi, Varun. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all the panelists who joined us today. It's indeed very inspiring to listen to your journeys and how much is that you're doing in the sector and how have you gone about it. I'm sure all of us have taken many notes. Briefly touching on the next segment and what we are planning to do, for the sector at ISDM, we often say that for a sector that is so complex, and we are trying to address issues that have existed for decades and centuries altogether, right? We really need the best of the minds in the sector today to come forward, contribute, and work with us. And at this stage, the sector really is beaming with opportunities. We are literally, welcoming young people with open arms to come and join us and really look at creating a difference together. And if at all, the last 1 year has really been an evidence to it, with young people, with people from all walks of life coming together to address the kind of crisis and challenges that the pandemic threw at us. Moving forward, to this segment, what I'll do is that I do have a few set of questions for all panelists, but seeing that, the Q&A box is buzzing with questions, I'll prefer to, combine some of the questions that I had with the questions which are coming up from the audience. Moving to the first question of the evening, and this is a question that I would really like to hear on from Manisha, that you talked about your journey in the sector since the 90s till date. And one of the things that we would really like to hear is what has been the most exciting and fulfilling part of your journey? What really makes you feel that it was worthwhile to come into this sector and do what you're doing right now?
Sure, thanks, Aruna. I just think, if I have 7 lives, then I'm sure I will. I mean, all 7 lives I would be in different, I will be in this sector. So, while that sounds like a bombastic, statement, let me try to, that's a big question, just kind of, share perhaps 3 things that for me have been so defining and so enriching about my work in the sector, and which has kind of really shaped who I am and how I identify, and shaped and changed my voice. So first, and I think this is true, it was true for me then, 2 decades back, and much more so now, and that's something that all the 3 panelists have pointed out, is growth. The kind of growth that you experience in this sector is absolutely unparalleled. And I can share that from my experience. I joined Ashoka Innovators for the Public, in 1994. I was straight out of college. I was 20 years old. I joined as an intern. in less than 8 years, I had been given that space and I had been challenged by my peers in the India office and across the world to grow enough to take on the responsibility of serving as the country director. So, sort of by the time I was 28, 29, I was, the country director for Ashoka. And by the time I left, which was, I was 30 at that time, I was an international director. So, and I promise you, it was not, I mean, a lot of it was because of the hard work, of course, that I brought in. But all my colleagues, at the international level and across different, and even in India were, had degrees from Ivy League colleges, from premier colleges. And I had kind of stepped in straight with a graduation degree. So folks, I haven't kind of, studied, I don't have a degree for anything that I've done. And I'm sure that's true for all of you out there, right? But there was never a differentiation. It was all about all of us coming to the table, identifying the wicked problems for our organization, for sector shaping, and going out and doing what we had to. So that kind of growth was that growth story, that being open to learnability. Of course, I was called upon to work, like mercilessly, which I loved, we all kind of were clocking those hours. So there was that challenge that, as a young person, I had to respond to. So that growth is something, and I see that everywhere. I built up startup. We've been running startup for the last 12 years. We've now worked in about 18 states, incubated and scaled about 100 plus social enterprises, trained 300, 400 social entrepreneurs. But my colleagues have all been, like less than half my age. So I think, our chief innovations officer till last year was, under 30 years old. And I'm really grateful for how young people have come to startup, have claimed startup, have owned startup, and all the innovations that we do in terms of, our strategy systems, our design thinking processes and frameworks, they've all been designed by young people. So, like Anshul, Abhishek, Alakshi, I don't know, you were probably kind of, thinking about your startups by the time you were 13. So that was one. And the other thing was, like Alakshi said, you learn outside of your office. So my salary, I think I have had a good life. I never went hungry with my salary that I got from the development sector. So the development sector pays, sort of salaries for you to kind of live a really respectable life. But I've traveled to all the states of the country. And I have actually traveled to places that have not been on the map. So they've not been on the map, right? Of course, in those times, we didn't have a map. So that kind of traveling and that kind of learning that you get is unparalleled. So for all of us who are making bucket lists, join the sector, right? I mean, your bucket lists may not be the Kenyan, forest safari, but you will go and see the depths of, the rainforests of, of the Northeast, where I actually got caught in the middle of a riot. And I had to kind of make my way. So there are those, film moments too. But most importantly, you just get to learn from the gurus of the ground. So I've had, the opportunity to work and learn with, Nobel Prize laureates, from Magsaysay award winners. And that's, of course, because I'm older. But I do want to sort of say that, the future Nobel laureates, the future Magsaysay award winners, the future change makers, sector shapers are all right now in the development sector. So, that kind of learning, that, no school or college teaches you how to ask questions. You're trained to answer questions. But in this sector, I just learned how to ask questions, and that kind of learning has also in many ways in every way transformed myself. So I don't know if my work or I have transformed anything, but I have certainly been very transformed. So, and have had friends like all of you. I think that social capital, that community capital that you have, I've learned from gurus of the ground. So my friends are, sort of, one of my biggest mentors is a tribal woman who sort of is the founder member of India's first rural bank for women entrepreneurs. And every time I go to her and say there's a challenge, she kind of shouts at me and slams the phone down. So I think there are so many things, the sector is just waiting for, it's a crucible for young people to, really find the change makers in themselves. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks, Manisha. And just taking this conversation forward in terms of learning from the ground and experiencing, what really are the life lessons that one can really bring in the way we conduct ourselves, we grow as individuals and professionals. Just continuing on that thread, Anshul, there is a question from the audience wherein we've been asked that, do you see a correlation between volunteering and social entrepreneurship? And if you would like to take that and talk about your journey and for the ones that you have interacted with.
Sure. I mean, I would say all social entrepreneurs volunteer their time, at least in the beginning, right, of their journey. And I know Alakshi will agree. Pretty much everybody will agree. I think when you're trying to become a social entrepreneur, it's very important to feel the passion to the degree of selflessness. Because when I started YK, I was 17. I was just in school, going into college. There was no clue of how I'm going to make money, how the organization will sustain itself, where the funding will come from, who will work full-time, part-time, etc. And really the initial cohort of people that came together worked for 3 to 4 years without absolutely expecting any kind of a payment or any kind of monetary gain. And it took that much time to really settle the organization down and make it reach a point where we could start figuring out how to pay ourselves and how to make sure that we're using the money to create more impact and so on. So I feel there is definitely a correlation, and the correlation is in the fact that when you're committing yourself to an issue to the point that you want to build an enterprise, you have to do it keeping in mind that you may have to actually volunteer your own time from time to time. If say Youth Kiawah is going through a tough time right now and we have to figure out how we're gonna support the organization, I'm typically the first person who will come in and say that, I won't take my salary for X number of months and so on. Let's put that back in the organization. So I think if you take it in the very literal sense of what volunteering means and what social entrepreneurship means, I definitely think there's a very solid correlation. And in, even beyond that, if you look at how, social entrepreneurs often function, especially at a bootstrap level, unfunded kind of a level, they really build values around volunteerism. They really build values that help people who are volunteering their time get ahead, not just in the organization, but in their larger career trajectory. The people who are kind of putting in that effort, every good social entrepreneur makes sure that they're able to derive enough value out of it as well. So I feel there's a very solid correlation between social entrepreneurship and volunteerism. And I'm pretty sure others on the panel will also agree with that.
Wonderful. Thanks, Anshul. And in fact, this whole bit about continuously keep learning, I think that's been the most fulfilling bit about all of us working in the sector, because you have to continuously adapt and be agile, right? And respond to what is emerging from the context, which is both exciting and very, very fulfilling. And being a social entrepreneur, nonetheless, I mean, that takes it to another level altogether. Yeah, just coming back to another question that we have from one of our audiences, wherein Vidura is asking as to what are the different kinds of job opportunities in the sector. And, with regards to ISDM, we have had people from doctors to engineers to lawyers to people who have just freshly graduated from different disciplines and gone on to work with all kinds of organizations that Alakshi was talking about, from funders to, implementing organizations on the ground. What are the kind of job opportunities that you think the sector is ready to offer today to young people?
Right. I think, I just want to say that Alakshi very well articulated the way the sector is kind of divided, right? So I think if you just take that as a framework, when you're going out and looking for, jobs, especially, I mean, as a young person, there is a great deal of opportunity across the board, be it a hybrid organization, a pure non-profit, a pure for-profit, and so on. Like, for example, Kiawah is it's registered as a for-profit organization. It's a private limited company, but we also identify as a social enterprise. And the kind of opportunities that we offer and the kind of opportunities similar organizations offer give a young person the ability to kind of innovate a lot more than, say, a traditional job would or a traditional industry would. I feel a lot of organizations are looking for communication experts because, funnily enough, young people are thought to be communication experts, and they're typically put in those roles. But if it also means that there's an opportunity. So, so if you're genuinely good at it, or if you're looking at building your skill in a particular area, then that's definitely something to think about. I think there's a very solid, opportunity in the fundraising space, because traditional spaces of fundraising are now kind of shrinking. We are not at a time where you can simply depend on the goodness of, three individuals who will annually make a donation and you'll be fine. I think the conversation and the movement around fundraising is now kind of moving more towards figuring out a people-based model. For example, there's an organization called the Internet Freedom Foundation, and they have a phenomenal, completely public funded model where, through a really solid subscription model, they're actually able to fund a lot of the work that they're doing. I'm one of their supporters. There are so many others who are supporting them. So I feel, and that's just the start of what might become something more innovative in the fundraising space. And I feel younger people who have the ability and the agility to understand what the trends are moving towards when it comes to paying, when it comes to putting the money, on what you believe in. I think that's a really good opportunity for you to figure out, what you can do to an organization with an organization. I feel that while the opportunities are plenty, I think organizations also need to make a mindset shift. Because typically what happens is that if you're a young person and you join an organization, you're put in a very stereotypical job. Like I was saying, you're typically put in like a communication portfolio, or you start at a point where, at least in the beginning 5 years, your opportunity scale is fairly limited. And I'm talking about really traditional organizations. I'm talking about organizations that thrive on bureaucracy, which make sure that you only become a program manager when you're 40, which honestly doesn't make sense, in the kind of world that we're living in. So I feel that organizations need to really push themselves hard and evolve and understand that you can't. I mean, if as an organization you don't want to be a fossil, you have to really evolve and you have to understand the needs of the people today. So I feel it has to work both ways. While young people prepare themselves for opportunities that that will help organizations grow, organizations need to prepare themselves for how young people are thinking and how they are wanting to grow, with the issue. And that kind of also boils down to how, and this is not development sector, it's across the board. If you're young, you're patronized. If you're young, there's like a whole complexity that comes into your job role. I think we have to kind of get over all of that to make sure that younger leaders emerge. And what Manisha said, that most of her leaders in the organization are actually young, and they are kind of leading innovation and change. I think more organizations need to adopt that kind of an approach. Even at Youth Kiawah, like I'm turning 30 and I feel I have turned 30 and I feel like I'm already old, and I'm looking for somebody who can lead the organization who's much younger, than I am. So I feel that's the, if you want to stay relevant, that's the perspective that even organizations need to have toward the jobs that they're creating.
Great. Thanks, Anshul. Alakshi, just taking this forward, right? I mean, so many opportunities, and we have all kinds of mix of organizations, right? We have organizations like Startup, which is like a very young and vibrant organization with a lot of young people in leadership roles. And then you have organizations on the other side that Anshul was talking about, where experience is given a lot of weightage, right? Now, looking at young people who would like to enter the sector, what you think should be the way to start with it? What should be the first step that they should definitely take moving forward, and what is the kind of career trajectory that they can hope for?
Yeah. So I think even when I was talking, I tried to sort of shed some light on that as to what are the steps that you can follow. honestly, in my opinion, I think it's a very personal journey. So there's no codified way around it that you do this and this will happen and this will happen. But these are just like, overall frameworks that you can work with, right? So just identifying, okay, what am I good at? What am I passionate about? What do I like to do? So these three buckets are always helpful, because while your passion is important, that, this is the, whatever field that I feel for, or this is the topic that I want to work in, I feel like there has to be an equal weightage to skill set also, especially as a fresher. I'm not saying that you'll have identified what your basics, huge skill set is, but what is your strength area? There are a lot of these tests. There's a strength finder test, which basically talks about that you don't focus on your areas of development, but you focus on what your strengths are there already. So you build up on that. So yeah, so I think finding that match between what you're good at, what do you feel for, and then finding that organization that sort of bridges that gap, as Anshul was also saying, right? Like that matchmaking has to be done. And as a fresher, you have to do it yourself, because you don't have, let's say, a very, very wide network or a lot of knowledge about the organizations in the space. So you go out there, you talk to more and more people. So yeah, so I think just networking, understanding, reflecting a little bit, and then doing that matchmaking for yourself is very essential.
Thanks, Alakshi. And just sounding on what you were saying, a lot of ISDM alumni who have been, either belonging to the technology field or the journalism field have gone on to work in very senior positions in organizations, building on their existing skills and adding to the knowledge of the sector and how do you work with wicked problems, right? So that has happened, and we've seen that in the past, and they are doing brilliant work in the sector.
100%. I feel like just one point, right? Like we categorize these sectors as, I want to work here, I want to work in the private sector. I saw a question also which said that, okay, can I work in the corporate sector while volunteering? I think we should see jobs as something that we want to do to create impact, right? Rather than focusing on what sector you want to get into. It's more about, okay, this is the way I can scale my impact. This is the way I can solve a problem, rather than going by the structure of the organization or, like the bureaucracy, and if I'm senior enough or not, if I'm a fresher to do this job, will I be able to do that? So I feel like that's a very outdated style of thinking. The way organizations are evolving, people are, the social sector is doing private sector work, private sector is doing social sector work. So there are a lot of overlaps there. So rather than thinking of it as separate entities, I would say the function should be opposite, that you function from what you want to do. How do you want to create change? How do you understand a problem statement per se? So yeah, just wanted to add that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And, one of the first ways to begin is that how do we become responsible people wherever we are? Doesn't matter whether you work with an NGO or a foundation or even a company, right? So that's definitely the first step. Coming to you, Abhishek, and I've been saving this question for you, given the experience of Muskan Dreams. There is a question from Kritika that says that, is it important to be at a bureaucratic or administrative level in government to have the authority to make sustainable policy changes? Or can we make scalable changes through social entrepreneurship? Would be wonderful to hear your experience of working with Muskan Dreams and trying to do some of that. And how can some people who are there in the audience, join organizations in creating sustainable, scalable solutions, not just on the ground, but also affecting policy?
Where lost over?
Abhishek, we can hear you and we can see you.
Not able to hear you. Like, I missed your voice, Aruna. I was just trying to figuring out, like, can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, so I just asked that, if we are looking at scalable solutions for social sector, how can we do it? Do we really need to be in government or high-ranking positions, and can we do it while we are in this sector? like your experience with Muskan Dreams has been in the past?
Right. I think it's when youth are coming into the sector. I think first what we need to understand is basically and scale what works, right? So sometimes what happens, the one thing is basically, generally what people do is basically they work, and when they get success, then they think about how it can, how we can actually take this on scale, right? The second thing is basically, the second part is basically design for scale, which can be scaled up ultimately, right? So I think the most important thing which I've experienced and learned from my mentors is basically, design for scale, and things scale. So I think this is a very important point first. And the second thing is basically, it doesn't matter that you are in the private sector or in the government sector or in the development sector. I think your approach can, always be, you can. For example, that in Madhya Pradesh, that we are working closely with the state government. Although we are a kind of sort of small and mid-size organization, there are organizations who are actually quite big as comparison to us. But I think that doesn't matter. Ultimately the matter is basically what sort of value you are creating for these stakeholders. I think the most important part, what sort of experiments you are doing, what sort of learnings you are taking to the government, taking connecting the government, like connecting the top to bottom down sort of approach, and people those who are working on the ground, and people those who are part of the decision making team. I think these are sort of the more important thing. Ultimately, the most important thing is basically how we can actually create impact at scale. It doesn't matter, it's like who are the key people behind this. If we can go towards the government with the right kind of approach, they have the capacity and capability to deliver at scale, right? I think which as an organization, we cannot serve to the throughout the India, each state. I think in collaborating with government, in collaborating with multiple organizations, we can actually create impact at scale. So I think this is what.
Thanks, Abhishek. Thank you so much. Just looking at, we can go on forever with the kind of questions that are coming up in the chat box. And what we can do is that we will put together some of these questions, and we would love to put answers as, FAQs on our website, so all of us can refer to it, and also request our panelists here. We will come back to you with some of these questions and just record your comments and answers and make that available to everybody. Just looking at what we have been able to speak today, we are definitely talking about a sector which is very vibrant and varied, which does not go by certain stereotypes of who is a development professional. Right, it's really welcoming, looking at different kinds of skills. It offers opportunities which are not just about a spirit of altruism, but making it a professional career for yourself, where you can earn your bread and butter and still have the job satisfaction and a sense of responsibility and accountability for what is the kind of world that you would like to create and live in. All right, so there's a lot of amalgamation, like Alakshi, Manisha, Abhishek, Anshul have talked about in terms of different kinds of opportunities. And there are many organizations, including ISDM, who are offering fellowships, education programs, who are really creating the space for people from various walks of life to transition into a career option which is more relevant given what drives you. Right. So I would say that explore, get in touch with the people that you have heard today, get in touch with such organizations who are offering you opportunities to transition and welcoming you, spend time on the ground. That's just fantastic. And I'm sure no organizations will say no to somebody who would like to volunteer with them. Right. So please do join us in what we are trying to do. And signing off here, over to you, Varun. Thank you so much, everybody, for a wonderful discussion.
Thank you, Aruna.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Aruna.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Aruna. And thank you to all our panelists for such great insights. I think it was really, really helpful for our audience today. And with that, we come to the end of today's webinar. I would like to extend a huge thank you to all the speakers today. Thank you so much for taking out your time and talking to our audience who want to, make a mark in the development sector. I think that is really, really nice and helpful of you. And I would also like to thank the audience for taking their time out today to attend this webinar. You have taken the first step towards building a community that inspires change. Let us create an ecosystem for each one of us, an ecosystem that is conducive to the growth of the development sector. Remember, the only way to grow is together. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.